to me, anti-Semitism is a theory of everything that is kind of like a bag that has something for everyone. And so, if you're anti-immigration, here's anti-Semitism, because Jews are, believe it or not, the ones who are bringing in Black and brown people into the US, for instance, and destroying the white bloodline, right? If you are somebody who's really just hates Black people, here you go. Jews basically orchestrated the entire civil rights movement because Black people certainly were too intellectually inferior to be able to do that on their own. So Jews created every uppity Black person you see. You can thank a Jew for that because they created these movements. Jews are behind BLM if you don't like that. Jews are behind defund the police. So so what else? If you don't like, if you don't like the vaccine mandates, let's bring a Jew. That's the Jew who's making money off, from big pharma. That's corporate medicine, etc. So it's this grab bag with something for everyone. It's just so fungible and plastic that it makes it very, very dangerous because it creates a way to kind of bring people together across the right and across the left and across racialized lines. There are people, they're Black Marxists and Black and people who are Muslim who are coming into to embrace anti-Semitic conspiracy theories as well. So it's like this great magic wand of bringing people together to ultimately take down the left. I mean, and that is why this matters so much to not just Jews, but to the left, because we can't move forward as a left if we're being infiltrated and directed by anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that undermine our abilities to really understand how power really is working and what is really driving immigration and what's really driving the climate crisis and what's really driving, we can't understand how we got here and where to go if we're relying on these conspiratorial theories that scapegoat Jews as the power that is behind everything. I also wanted to say that when I read Ibrahim Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, I remember thinking one of the things I love about his approach is that being an anti-racist isn't just a passive state of mind. It's not just, well, I'm not a racist, I don't have racist thoughts. It's that it's an active pursuit of one's curiosity about history, right? So to be anti-racist, if you're living in the US, a post-slavery society, it means becoming very actively involved as a researcher to understand the history of slavery in this country and Jim Crow. And, that's on everybody in this, in this country to understand this history of how we got to the mess, last summer with George Floyd and all the George Floyds before George Floyd. So I love that he says, it's not just a passive state of mind, it's an activity. And to me, for the left to become a fully anti-racist movement, it has to embrace anti-Jewish racism. And, I don't use the word anti-Semitism all that much anymore because the term was fabricated by somebody to make anti-Jew hate or Jew hate sound more social scientific. There are no Semite people. It was a way to make European Jews sound not European. It's a way to make Ashkenazi Jewish people like me look like we were primordially and essentially Middle Eastern. When Jews have been in Europe for 2,000 years. So I feel like for the left to really say, we're gonna go full stop for an anti-racist kind of program, we have to include anti-Jewish racism, which is one of the earliest forms of racism, where you take a group of people and see them as sharing a biological essence, genes, that's been the same throughout time, across the globe. We have to have an active anti-Jewish racist curiosity and movement. And people have to be willing, I think, to read, just like people starting to read, thank God, a lot of, so many important books written by Black and brown scholars. people have to start reading books about anti-Semitism because they have to realize it really is in their own interest as leftists, not just as people who are Jews or allies to Jews, but as leftists. If we want to have a truly anti-racist left that can take down capitalism and transcend authoritarianism and transcend hierarchies such as the state and heteropatriarchy, then we have to take down anti-Semitism, which is used to drive those other kinds of racism and to drive and to rationalize and normalize the world that we're living in as a whole. So, how do you become an active anti-Jewish, an anti-racist who takes on anti-Jewish racism? How do you become that active kind of person? And to me, it's kind of like there's three prongs. One is you get curious and you look for, there's so many interesting books and articles, and I can't give you a whole bibliography here, but the Institute for Social Ecology, I'm really proud to say, is one of the only leftist organizations that prioritizes looking at anti-Semitism. So you could take Peter and Blair Taylor's Understanding Anti-Semitism class. You can come to the ISE and ask for, I think we're going to put together, definitely after this panel, a reading list. You can also get together with people and create a study group and create a little syllabus. And that could include watching some really interesting documentaries together. Also, you could invite speakers from the ISE or other speakers or people who are actively fighting anti-Semitism to come speak to your group. We have Zoom technology that we're getting more comfortable with now. The study group from anywhere in the world could ask somebody from ISE or from anywhere to come and sit with them in their group to talk about this. And the last thing is that if you as an individual or as an organization, you have a commitment to being anti-racist, always make sure that anti-Jewish racism is on the agenda. And when it's not, ask why it's not. And ask people to be curious about why it's not. And it might not be, it's probably not malicious or intentional at all. And that's precisely the point. It's that we're trying to raise consciousness of why it's important. So if it's not there, it's because people don't understand why it's important. And so that's like a main thing for myself. It's like, okay, how to really get people to get, this needs to always be part of the anti-racist agenda on the left.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you added that practical sort of end section. And along the same lines, Peter, have you got any ideas on sort of practical ways moving forward?
Sure, mine are brief. They are sub points to addenda to the beautiful things that Chaia just said. The first one I would recommend is for people doing this kind of self-reflection, collective self-education through study groups or whatever other format, what I would recommend is try to pay attention to the ways in which anti-Semitic beliefs are uncannily able to mimic radical ideas. That's one of the most important aspects of modern anti-Semitism as a worldview, as a belief system, as a mindset, is its ability to look like it's doing the same things as radical critiques of capitalism, of the nation state, of what have you. I would ask people to pay attention to how does that work? How do they pull that off? How does anti-Semitism pull that off? And in that spirit, I'm going to read you just a one-sentence quote, a very brief quote from a guy named Moishe Postone, who passed away a few years ago, very important scholar of and historian of anti-Semitism, among other things. Postone wrote near the end of his life, "Anti-Semitism fuses the deeply reactionary with the apparently emancipatory in an explosive amalgam." End of quote. I think he's onto something there. Anti-Semitism has this ability to bring left-wing and right-wing beliefs together in an especially dangerous way. So when we're doing the kind of education, self-reflection, learning, and curiosity that Chaia is talking about, try to make that part of the task. And the last point I would say is a very seemingly very simple one, a very straightforward one. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that at least some of the people who end up viewing these video clips, that some of those people have probably had the unpleasant experience in their own life of having been accused of anti-Semitism and they think the accusation is wrong. In a lot of cases, it is wrong. It's important for us to recognize that anti-Semitism, like any other term, like any other concept, it can be abused. It can be tossed around like an epithet rather than being used critically and carefully and contextually in a way that helps illuminate something that's actually going on in the real world, rather than as a handy label for something that didn't actually quite happen that way. So if you've had that experience, you people out there who are complete strangers to me, what I would say is two things. Don't let it discourage you. Don't let it deter you. And two, don't let that be a reason to abandon the term anti-Semitism or to give up on the concept of anti-Semitism. I mentioned an hour ago or something now, I'm an anarchist. I come from the anarchist movement. I am acutely aware that for millions of people out in the world today, anarchy means destruction and violence and chaos and bomb throwing and God knows what else. It's not what it means to me. It's not what it means to any anarchist in the world. It doesn't stop us from using a term like anarchy or anarchism in responsible and reasonable ways. The same way we can use a term like democracy in responsible, critical, and meaningful ways, despite the fact that that term is contested and fought over and people have radically disagreeing notions about what it means. The exact same thing is true for the concept and the term of anti-Semitism. I fully take Chaia's point. In fact, I'm going to have to go home and think more about Chaia's point that because of the tainted origins of the term itself, that might be a reason for us to eventually give up on it. But as long as it is still the word that means what it means in English, don't let the fact that it is sometimes falsely applied to people who don't merit the term, don't let that stop you. Use that as an occasion to think through, when is that term appropriate? When can it be applied in ways that are well-founded, critical, and thought through?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great, really important point. I'm just going to remind my subscribers and viewers to investigate all of the links underneath this video thoroughly, which will include links to upcoming ISE events. Also, any important links that Peter and Chaia want to send me, I can put underneath the video. But for now, Peter Staudenmaier and Chaia Heller from the ISE, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you later on.